introduce Ed Lambert. He is the lead new product development engineer at AT&T. Ed, welcome.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Great. All right, I'm gonna cover a little bit of history about me, because a key theme that we're gonna talk about today is history and how to learn from things that have happened in the past to predict what's been happening in the future. So another thing, important fact, today's my birthday. So if you have like hard questions, please direct them to Michael and Sanjay, please. The other thing that as I'm getting old, I'm reflecting on, my life and covered various bits of ground, and I've been able to kind of Forrest Gump my way into interesting jobs. So I was a singing waiter and a river tour guide and an electrician. I worked in history museums for 10 years, and then started working for an internet startup that was bought by Disney, became the Disney Internet Group, ran the website for NASCAR, the NBA, ABC News. I did a web database startup, and then I got involved in kind of building mobile apps, some of the very earliest ones, and then went to what was AT&T Wireless at the time, later Singular and AT&T, and started their developer program. So started doing the technology for both APIs as well as application optimization. I currently work for AT&T Research, where I work with a lot of people who are way smarter than me, that are very talented research scientists, and we try to apply and study this area that Sanjay didn't really, Sanjay was very broad. I'm gonna go very deep into this very specific part of the ecosystem, which is what application developers do and how their decisions impact things. So kind of looking at history, when the iPhone launched, a lot of developers started suddenly building mobile applications, and it was this kind of gold rush. When that happened, they didn't understand a new paradigm, right? They thought that the mobile network was like a wire, and it ain't. It's like a walkie-talkie, right? They didn't get things like that. So they did things that were well-meaning, but they made a lot of mistakes that really impacted the mobile networks and the quality of experience. I'm gonna say some real things. I actually worked using some tools that AT&T developed and went out and talked to like these biggest developers in the ecosystem. These are real things that happened, and I'm gonna shield the names to protect the parties and not to shame them, but there was a major streaming app. It wasn't compressing any of the subtitles. So all the subtitles, they were streaming all the time. There was uncompressed text, and that was like 17% of the data from that app. There was a music app that wasn't compressing, and they were kept downloading this redundant metadata. It was a huge amount of the data from their app. A streaming app, very like household name streaming app, those little thumbnails you see when you browse the carousel, they were a megabyte per image, right? Gigantic images. There was a wrong button. A sports app, team logos don't change. They weren't caching those things, so they're downloading all the time. Now those are all about data tonnage, but there's also kind of connection management and how applications call data on the network that's really important. There was a major social media app, was doing background updates every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day, every time. This is what that connection looked like. It was making 7 different requests over time, turning the radio on 7 times, keeping the radio connected to the network for 75 seconds every 30 minutes. We worked with them to update that and brought that radio connection time down by half, right? That makes a real difference. That made a gigantic difference in battery performance. So how did we fix those things? What we did first, we really did developer support. Figure out what are the problems that people are facing, and then from those problems, what are the root causes, and then from those, what are best practices? So within AT&T, in the developer program, we created a set of best practices and posted them out for developers, and of course, we talked to a lot of places developers actually go, the Android, the iPhone ecosystems, those sort of things as well, to help highlight these. We also created a tool that we open sourced and we gave away for free for developers. Initially it was called Application Resource Optimizer. Our marketing team made me change the name to video optimizer, but it's the same tool is still available, and it helps to kind of fix both video streaming application problems, but these other kind of tonnage connection management problems as well. It's kind of like Wireshark on steroids in that you can capture a PCAP trace of an application, but in addition to just the PCAP, you get a high-speed, high-quality video of what the user was doing, synced together with all of the traffic going up and down, plus a bunch of other statistics and some heuristics that bashes that against these best practices. To say, are you doing this thing well, or are you doing this thing poorly? And if you do it poorly, you get a red X, and it tells you what to go fix. So that was, this was over the past 10, 12 years that we've been working on this. Now we're in a new age where I think we're going to hit another paradigm. And, it's not obvious what the big killer app is going to be in 5G, but I believe it's looming out there. There's some kid that's going to develop something. It's going to be a compelling experience, and people are going to, kind of get on that bandwagon. There's going to be a lot of developers in that as well. They're not going to understand these best practices as well, particularly things like how do you balance what resources you put on the edge versus what you put in the cloud, and how do you manage kind of latency, as you get latency sensitive AR apps. There's a whole lot of new things that people are going to need to figure out again. So in order to kind of deal with that, wanted to take a more industry focused approach. So I approached our friends at GSMA, worked with a number of other operators to participate in this, and started a working group on 5G application optimization best practices. We wanted to document those best practices and also talk about and try to lay out a plan for a tooling and testing strategy that makes it easy for developers to do that. So again, we followed this process of doing developer support, finding out, talking to people, finding out what the problems are, generalizing it into root causes, then creating best practices, and we want to get to a point of actually instrumenting those best practices as tests, with the idea that we really need to kind of make this common sense for developers, right? This stuff that's not really well understood yet. So we interviewed a bunch of developers. I'm not going to read all these questions, but we interviewed a bunch of developers. We worked with partners at the Telco Edge trial, other partners that helped introduce us to some developers who are doing very cutting edge things. So like gaming developers and that are doing AR gaming, people that are doing kind of sound synchronization, things that are truly latency dependent. And we asked them, what are the issues that you are encountering? What are the problems that you're facing? And from that, from these questions, we pulled together a set of best practices, and we created a document that we launched in November that is really kind of the really very first version of what should be an organic kind of living document where we want to continue to add best practices. And I do want to put a call out to folks in the room. If you know of stuff that's happening, if you've had problems, if you've talked to your other colleagues, please come talk to me, because we really want to learn from what's happening, because this benefits the whole ecosystem. So some of the things that we learned in talking to these developers are things like, make sure you test to know what the actual network capability is in your app. Like, don't just trust what just because it says that you're on a specific network type, that you might have different characteristics than you actually need. And then make sure, once you have those characteristics, your app is able to be sensible, right? You're able to handle variations in latency. You're able to handle variations in throughput. You do things to your users to where you're not going to like drop your users on the floor, right? Maybe if there's an advanced capability for an application, you have that as an optional thing that people can opt into rather than defaulting to that, right? And especially this is true as 5G networks mature, as edge clouds work out, get developed. Those are all really important. So the future where we want to go is to add more best practices. We'll talk to more developers. This is all also highly linked to sustainability. like all of these best practices, all of these things that make applications more efficient, save massive amounts of power as they're pulling this data off the network. So we're doing a paper right now on sustainability. We also want to work with the platform vendors to be able to integrate some of these ideas into what they do, because that's where developers are going to be. I'd like to expand the use of video optimizer, application resource optimizer, and then work more with content providers for on things that are really mutual interest between the developer community and the operator community, because it also all benefits the users. So I'll leave up a couple links to materials that you can find, the video optimizer tool as well as that GSMA paper. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Ed. And just so you know, I've had a word with the GSMA, and they're working on rebranding the networking drinks to your birthday drinks later today. Right.